programs, you know, where they repay loans and annuities, and then sort of O&R and responsibility.
We're going to try to hook up a video. So are we broadcasting on this yet?
Yep.
Okay, so should we get started?
Yeah.
Can the neighbor islands see us? Are they on this?
They are on. I think they're online too. But just hold a second. We're. You guys got the video ready?
Okay. Do they have wear a microphone?
Maybe.
You gotta just let me know.
Huh?
Stephen Cook
You
chicken.
can come.
Oh, sorry.
Cool, it's a business. You're a business manager?
Her program director.
Program director.
Her right hand.
Right. So we ready?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to get started. Can everybody hear okay on the neighbor islands and the video cast?
Good for Maui.
Okay, very good. Well, welcome to another. All right. So, welcome to another No Limits speaker seminar, where we invite people that are thinking way outside of the box, outside of what might be otherwise normal types of thinking, to do things that are extraordinary, to move people and help change the world. Okay, right, I'll start with this. Today we have a very interesting woman, and you'll hear all about her in a minute, but Roz Savage is a rower, and for those of you that paddle can relate to it, you know, paddling from here to Molokai, that's a big deal. But she's rowed from California, but before that she rowed across the Atlantic, and she's on her way to rowing to eventually Australia, to be the first woman to do a solo Pacific crossing. Is that right? Rowing. So she may look small, but she's pretty tough. She's got to be really strong. But it's a real inspiring story, and what we're trying to do with No Limits is to try to give everybody a chance to find that person inside of them to make a difference in the world. And if we all do that, then we can make the world a better place. So she's going to be here in Hawaii for another few weeks before she gets started on the next journey, next part of her journey. And to get started, I'd like to, we've got a lay. Why don't you, or I can come over here, should she come up? Why don't you come up? We'll get started. Anyway, this is the Hawaiian tradition, so welcome. And we have a lei for Nicole Kukuinats. We'll give this to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before I forget too, we have a, you get your very own Oceanit t-shirt for No Limits. and we've had, I mean, you joined a company of some very interesting people that have thought way outside of the norm, and so we're really looking forward to hearing more. And to get started, why don't you come up here? I know we've got a video we're going to be showing in a minute, so
so I can get wide.
yeah, we'll get you. We'll put this on you. You can stick that in your pocket or something. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing story, so I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to start with the video?
Yeah.
Okay. So for everybody that's, you should be able to see this, but we're going to show a video. And if you haven't seen her stuff on YouTube, it's actually very interesting. If you've been,
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Sounds like we're on.
You guys are trying to push it through.
We're not seeing the video, I'm not quite.
Okay.
You may end up.
neither are we. So stand by.
Okay, we may start it again, but we're having a couple of technical
My
challenges.
mission is to raise awareness of the top environmental issues facing.
Good soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
For 11 years, I worked as a management consultant. I used to daydream about big
Okay,
events.
so why don't we start
Why don't we
it?
start it
I
again?
could have one of
Okay,
my
we're going
own.
to start over on the video.
Try eject it first.
We almost got it, guys.
Isn't that the soundtrack from like
Born Ultimatum.
Ultimatum or
What
something?
is it? I haven't
Yeah,
actually seen it.
which I liked it. It's a good movie. There's a Born Ultimatum. There's a Born Identity. Right? There's like
Born
three of them.
Supremacy.
Yeah.
Born Supremacy. That's it.
Supremacy.
Like a trivia question.
In 2005, I rowed solo across the Atlantic. In 2008, I became the first woman to row solo from California to Hawaii, and I plan to row all the way across the Pacific to Australia. My mission is to raise awareness of the top environmental issues facing the world today. My life used to be very different. For 11 years, I worked as a management consultant. I used to daydream about big adventures, but I never believed I could have one of my own. So one day, I sat down and I wrote two versions of my own obituary. The one that I wanted and the one that I was heading for. And they were very different. I realized that if I carried on as I wasn't going to end up where I wanted to be in 1 year or 5 years or at the end of my life. And I realized then I was going to have to make some big changes. So what gave me the idea to row across oceans? It was like the idea found me. And once it had found me, it wouldn't let me go. Eventually, I really had no choice but to do it, or I'll spend the rest of my life thinking, if only. I'm not having a good day. My right shoulder blade is giving me serious jip. I've got a bit of pain with the shoulder and stuff. I went on a crusty. My bum is really sore. Just keep going, just keep rowing. Rowing an ocean is hard, physically and mentally. You never forget the lessons you learn out there, because you've learned them the hard way. It doesn't matter the person that I was at the start of the race. She doesn't exist anymore. What matters is the person that I am now. I love using technology to share my adventure via the internet, and people seem to enjoy getting involved. They write to tell me it helps them face their own life challenges. I also enjoy sharing my experiences in person, and I speak to audiences of all types around the world. That is a very good question. I had a big dream for a big adventure. I decided to make it happen. I care about the environment. I'm just one person doing my bit, but I hope I'm spreading a few ripples. I really believe that each of us has it in our power to make a difference. My journey from San Francisco to Hawaii took 99 days and 1 million oar strokes. I could have stood under the Golden Gate Bridge and said, one stroke isn't going to get me anywhere. But you take a load of tiny actions and you string them all together, and you really can achieve almost anything. And it's the same with the environment. If we all pull together, we can make a world of difference. We can create a better, greener future. one stroke at a time.
All right.
Standing, can everybody see me?
Yeah.
Am I in the right place?
Could you see on the neighbor islands?
Where's David, guys?
No, we can't.
Where's the IT guys?
That's okay, I'm better in
Where's David, guys? They've got the controller.
Oh,
David.
David. He's got the controller there.
Okay, well, shall I start anyway, or
Yeah,
do we have?
there you go. Okay. You're good. Now they just need to move this little camera. There you go. It's moving. It's fine. There you go. All right. You're on.
Thank you very much. So, if I could just take you on a quick journey through time, back to the year 2000. I was living in London and I was supposed to be happy. I had everything that they told me, they being Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, everything that they told me would make me happy. I had the well-paid job as a management consultant. I was living in a big house in West London. I had a successful husband and a little red sports car. But there was something wrong with this picture. I felt there was something missing in my life. I didn't have a sense of purpose. I felt like there needed to be a purpose in my life, and I didn't know what it was, but I was pretty sure that management consultancy was not it. So, fast forward 6 years. It's March 2006, and I'm bobbing around on a 23-foot boat somewhere in the Western Atlantic. I've been out on the ocean for 103 days. I am now homeless, penniless, divorced, and I've really, really struggled to survive for those 103 days out there on the Atlantic. But bizarrely, I've never actually been happier, because at last it's like I've found my purpose. I've discovered that I can step outside the box. I don't have to be constrained by other people's expectations of what someone from my background or my education should be. I think one of the hardest things that I ever did was taking that first step on that journey out of the old lifestyle and into the new. Compared with that, even the hairiest moments on the Atlantic paled into insignificance. And as I say in the video, what I feel like I can really do, the real purpose of what I do, is not especially about rowing across the oceans. It's actually just really trying to provoke people a little bit, trying to get people to think about their own lives. And it was when I did that obituary exercise and joined up the dots into my future and realised that the track I was on wasn't taking me where I wanted to go. And I realised I had to make that course correction by a few degrees here and a few degrees there. But when I look back over the 9 years now since I first stepped off that treadmill, I'm amazed at how those little course corrections have actually put me on a very, very different path. And it's a very cool path that I'm on now. Especially this year, I feel like the environmental message that I always wanted to put out there through my rowing has really started to come to the fore. And so this year I'm launching an initiative in the run-up to, there's a big climate change conference taking place in Copenhagen in December, where they're going to renegotiate the Kyoto Agreement. So basically it's all the countries of the world coming together to decide what they're going to do about CO2 emissions and climate change. And whatever they decide there is what we are going to have to live with for the next 10 years, from 2012 to 2022. And those are going to be 10 very crucial years in the history of the planet, or certainly in the history of mankind. So I know a lot of the big environmental organisations are mobilising their forces to really make an impact, and I'm doing what I can. And what I try to bring to this is to get people to engage with a very human person out there taking on a big challenge, but realising that the accumulation of lots of tiny steps really does make a big difference. So specifically what I'm going to be asking people to do this summer is to match my 10,000 oar strokes a day with 10,000 steps a day. The good news for the people taking part in this challenge is it only takes an hour and a bit to do 10,000 steps, whereas it takes me 10 or 11 hours to do the 10,000 oar strokes. But I want to destroy their excuses. If I can be out there doing this, then they can manage to walk down to the coffee shop instead of driving there. because this is how I want to get them to do it. Really, the easiest way to fit 10,000 steps a day into your life is to use it as a substitute for driving. So really, I want people to walk more and drive less, so that not only are they thinking more environmentally, but they're actually having a very real impact on their own personal CO2 emissions. Because the message that I'm trying to get across is that even though each of us might feel that maybe what we do on any one given day is just a drop in the ocean, that our decisions as consumers don't really make a difference, that power of accumulation is a very important thing to recognise. That when you multiply up the 10,000 steps a day across day after day and across all the participants around the world, it really does start to make an impact. And also just get people, I suppose it's a philosophical thing that I'm hoping that they're going to get, just realising that they as individuals are empowered to make a difference. Well, basically, we are all already making a difference, and it's just up to us to decide whether we're going to make that a difference for good or a difference for bad. That our every action does have a consequence. And I think that's really important. It took me a long time to really work that out. When I did that obituary exercise, I think the phrase that resonated in my head was, my future is going to be the accumulation of my todays. So if I carry on today's actions, if I multiply those up 365 times, am I going to be where I want to be in a year's time? And at that point in my life, when I did the obituary exercise, the answer was, no, I'm not going to end up where I want to be in a year's time, or in 5 years, or in 10 years. And when I look at us collectively, when we look at what we're doing to this planet, are we actually heading in the direction that we want to be heading in? It's funny, coming back off the ocean, I sometimes feel a bit like a space alien landing on planet Earth, because my life out there is so very simple. I just have my little boat, I have all my food on board, and I grow my own bean sprouts out there. I've got my desalination plants that generates my fresh water from salt water through reverse osmosis. So I really am very self-sufficient there. Everything's powered by my solar panels. And life is very, very simple. Basically, I row, I eat, and I sleep, and I blog. So it really is a very simple existence. And I can remember rowing into Waikiki and just seeing all these high-rise buildings and just going, wow, this is going to be a bit of a culture shock. And then walking around and seeing all these stores full of designer clothes and knickknacks and, you know, just all these things. And I'm looking at them going, well, you can't eat it, drink it, or row with it, so what's the point of it all? And I just look at all that. I suppose I've been in a fortunate position that at that earlier stage of my life, I did have the opportunity to find out what it was like to have nice things. And I'd always aspired to that, because when I was growing up, we didn't have very much stuff. I was a preacher's kid, and so, you know, my dad certainly didn't go into the job for the money, that's for sure. And so as a child, I'd always imagined that having lots of stuff would make me a happier person. And it was only when I had all that stuff, and I looked around this big house, and just went, oh, that's a surprise, and not a very good one. It was like I had to reevaluate my whole value system. It was like, well, if material things and money aren't going to make me happy, then what is? And it was after that period of intense questioning and reading and thinking and writing in my journal that I decided that I was going to row across oceans, which seemed like a very logical decision at the time, believe it or not. So it is just interesting looking at, from the outside, from that kind of alien perspective of what we're doing to this planet. When you look at nature, most of the processes there are cyclical. You know, the acorn grows into the oak tree that uses all the goodness that's in the earth. Then the tree dies, rots back down into the earth to nourish the next generation of trees. But you look at our human design processes, and most of them are linear. We're sucking all the goodness out of the earth, turning it into stuff, and then throwing it into landfill. And whichever way you look at it, no matter how amazing the technology we find that can squeeze every last drop of oil out of the earth, whichever way you look at it, if we carry on as we are, one day we are just going to run out of these things, because it is a finite planet. And it's a bit like me on my finite boat. You know, that is my life support capsule. And when I look at the earth, it's just a bigger version of the same thing. It's the only Earth that we've got. It is our life support system. We need to take good care of it if we want it to take good care of us. And I don't think it's rocket science. There is lots of information out there, lots of science about climate change, about all the other environmental issues that are facing us, about plastic pollution in the oceans. There is an awful lot of bad news out there if you want to find it. But I prefer to focus on the positive. We don't need bad news. If I'm feeling ashamed or guilty or depressed about the state of the world, that's not going to motivate me to take positive steps to make a difference. So what I'm trying to do through my rowing is saying to people, look, it's actually really simple. There are things that you as an individual can do from tomorrow. Just walk more, drive less. It's not going to solve all the world's problems, but it's a good start. So I think there are many causes for optimism. I look at some of the things happening in the world of technology where we're realising that we can achieve much more collectively than we can individually. I think social media has given us a way of really connecting with people in other countries to build communities online of people who care, people who are living conscious lives, people who are just thinking about where we're heading. And I hope that we can use that technology and that growing spirit of cooperation and collaboration to really build a movement for change. So I'm feeling very positive about the future. I hope that the people who read my blogs and my tweets and listen to my videos and podcasts while I'm out in the ocean will get that sense of positive enthusiasm and can-do-it-iveness. There really is so much that we can do to make a difference for the better. And Rome wasn't built in a day, my ocean wasn't crossed in just a few strokes. It does take a lot of tiny actions to make that big difference. But my rowing is the perfect metaphor for that. 1 million strokes between San Francisco and here. One oar stroke only gets me a few feet, but you take 1 million oar strokes and you can cross an ocean. And similarly, if we all just keep leading socially aware, conscious lives, we really can make a world of difference. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Questions?
No?
Question from Maui?
How many oars? I have 4 oars. When I was doing the Atlantic, I actually managed to break all 4 of them before I got to halfway. Well, actually, it wasn't me, it was the weather. There was some really brutal weather. 2005, I think, was the year of Hurricane Katrina. And there was a lot of weather going on in the Atlantic that year. So there were more tropical storms than in any previous winter season. And just to put that into context, when I did the Atlantic, I was a contestant in a race. I was the only solo woman in the Atlantic rowing race. Most of the other crews were 2s and 4s, and there was one other solo guy. Out of the 26 crews that set out, 6 of the crews capsized or sank in the rough conditions and had to be rescued. So it was a pretty rough old year. So anyway, 4 oars that on the Atlantic I had to just patch them up with makeshift splints and duct tape and carry on rowing with them. But now I've got those were carbon fibre oars. They were just like hollow tubes. So very lightweight, which was a good thing, but not strong enough, so that was a bad thing. So now I've got oars that weigh 13 pounds versus the 3 pounds of carbon fibre ones. The ones I have now are made in Oregon from solid ash, wrapped in carbon fibre. And yes, they weigh a lot, but they're well balanced, so they don't actually feel heavy to row with, and they don't break, which is a good thing. There was a question from
Maui?
location.
Yeah,
Maui?
Hello, this is Kurt in Maui. I'm just curious if you might be able to share one of the most, I guess, compelling moments in terms of realizing what you're doing is making a difference. Was there some conversation that you had with somebody that you seem to recall more than others?
I think there are some standout moments. There are some really lovely emails that I've received from people saying, wow, we weren't aware of these issues. Like last year I was mostly talking about the plastic pollution in the oceans, the North Pacific garbage patch. That's why you saw me doing the beach clean-up on the North Shore. And it's sort of, you know, once you know about these things, once you know that every time you take a plastic bag, you're aware that it has to end up somewhere. And it's probably going to stick around for at least 40 years, maybe longer. Once you sort of make that connection, you can't not know it anymore. And I have terrible, like, green guilt. If I'm caught short and have to use a plastic bag, it's just spoils my day. And I'm not trying to make people feel guilty, but just to make them conscious. And so I'm just thinking of a particular email that I got from a family in, somewhere in the Midwest, I can't remember exactly where now, but saying we'd never actually thought about this before, and we just wanted to say a big thank you. We now have our supply of reusable grocery bags, and we make sure we always take them to the store with us. And it just feels good doing our bit for the environment, so we just wanted to say thank you for making us aware. And that really gave me a real buzz. I think that was one of the first emails that I had along those lines, and now I get quite a lot. And it's just so great to know that I'm actually reaching the unconverted rather than just preaching to the choir. Anybody else? Yeah.
Quick question about the bomb itself. If it capsizes, is it just game over, or is there a way to
No, it does self-right, and I've tested this extensively, not voluntarily. Yeah, I've done the full washing machine simulation. In the video you saw the Coast Guard airlift. That was in 2007, my first attempt on the Pacific that didn't go quite so well and became quite possibly their most reluctant rescuee ever. My boat capsized 3 times, and she did self-right, but in the capsizers she'd sustained a bit of damage and I knocked my head a couple of times. I could have carried on, but the situation was unfortunately taken out of my hands. Long story. So yes, it does self-right. It's got, actually after 2007 we added an extra 200 pounds of lead into the bottom of the hull to make her even more bottom heavy, and I make sure that everything on board is stowed down low. And also everything just has to be tied down. If it's out on the deck, it's very securely secured there. Inside the cabin, I try and keep everything stowed very carefully. Inevitably I get a little bit kind of lazy as time goes on, but then if the boat does flip, it makes a heck of a mess in there. So I do try and keep everything tidy and shipshape. So she's great at self-righting, but it's really an experience I would prefer not to repeat. Yes?
I guess 2 questions. During foul weather, at what point do you decide to stow the oars and batten down the hatches? And 2,
would you please repeat the questions? We're not hearing them over
Sure.
here.
Yes, I will do. Sorry.
And 2, do you have headgear? Since you mentioned that, you know.
Okay, so the question was, how do I decide when it's really just getting a little bit too dicey out on deck? And the second question, or second half of the question was, do I wear headgear? It's just kind of like an intuitive thing when I decide to retreat to the cabin and strap myself down to the bunk. I've got a couple of seat belts in there, so I could just secure myself along with all the cases. It's just that kind of sense of self-preservation kicks in, and it's like, you know what, I'm suddenly feeling very insecure out here, and I do have a very healthy sense of self-preservation. As I say, better a live donkey than a dead lion. And I'm not in any particular hurry out there. The main objective is to get across safely. So safety is a really, really high priority. After 2007, this is the question about the headgear, a friend of mine who's also my expedition medic, she's a very highly qualified doctor, she did buy me a little crash hat, but I haven't actually worn it so far. I take it when we just make her feel better. But it would be pretty difficult to try and sleep wearing that. So I think probably my best strategy is just to make sure that I'm safely inside the cabin and strapped down to my bunk when the going gets a bit bouncy. Yes?
How much sleep do you get? Where does the boat do while you're sleeping? Is it just
How much
floating?
sleep do I get, and what does the boat do while I'm off duty? The amount of sleep I get really varies depending on how rough the sea is. When I was doing the Atlantic, I experimented with all kinds of sleeping rowing shifts. So I tried 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 3 hours on, 3 hours off. In theory, for safety, I should, if I was being really strict about this, come up on deck every 20 minutes to check to see there are no ships. But when you haven't seen another vessel for 2 months, You get a bit blasé about that. So I've actually ended up, I need my sleep. You know, I'm rowing 11, 12 hours a day, and I like to get my shut-eye. So I tend to spend about 6 or 7 hours in the cabin, more or less trying to sleep. If it's rough, I'll get woken up every few minutes. But if the wind's blowing in the right direction, I don't mind that, because I can make some good miles overnight. My best ever was 11 miles while I slept, so that's good. If it's calmer, then I can actually get a really good night's sleep, but that doesn't happen very much. And then I probably won't make very many miles overnight. The boat, I choose my course so that generally I'm going with the currents and the winds, because you can't fight them. Not in a boat that bulky and me being this kind of size. So generally the currents are helping, but actually this next stage of the row is going to be quite challenging, because at the equator there's a counter current that flows from west to east. So, and that's about roughly 360 miles wide, which is about 2 weeks of my rowing, other things being equal. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen when I get there. There was a guy who set out to row from California to Australia, who was planning to do it non-stop, and he just got really messed around by that counter current, and he ended up in Papua New Guinea rather than Australia. He missed Australia by 1,000 miles, which is a little embarrassing. I mean, obviously he knew where Australia was and he knew where he was, but he just couldn't manage to connect the two. So I'm deliberately being a little bit flexible about my destination. I'm planning to stop halfway between here and Australia, but where exactly that will be, I won't really know until and unless I manage to cross the equator. So it's going to be a bit of a magical mystery tour. Yeah.
How do you navigate? Do you use GPS? Or?
I do use GPS, yes. Sorry, the question was, how do I navigate? I have taken courses in celestial navigation, but it's very difficult to use a sextant from the deck of a boat that's going like this, because the sextant measures the angle between the horizon and a given celestial body, whether that's the sun or the moon or a star. And first of all, I'm very low down in the water, so it's quite difficult for me to see the horizon unless it's dead calm. And also because even on the calmest day, my boat tips a lot, so it's very difficult to get any kind of accuracy. So GPS is a marvellous thing. I do sometimes sort of navigate by the stars. If I'm out there at night, I'll just sort of line up a star against a marker on the boat. And it's quite nice. It sort of gives me that feeling of connectedness to the earth and the heavens. But generally, good old GPS. So I take 3 of those.
Neighbor islands. Let's get some of the neighbor islands. I know the neighbor islands have questions.
Questions from Kauai. Do you have any children?
No, I don't. I have enough difficulty looking after myself, let alone anybody else. No, I was married for a while, but we didn't get around to having children.
All right. Very inspiring. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I have 3 questions.
3?
Do you have a support boat with you?
No, I don't. No, I'm just out there totally on my own. I do have a shore team. My program director, Nicole, is here today. She's going to be spending the summer in Hawaii, and we'll be speaking on a daily basis. But no, I don't have an escort boat.
What do you eat while you're out there?
What do I eat? Lots. I've actually, my food out there has become simpler and simpler over time. Partly out of environmental concern, I try and eat relatively unprocessed foods. And they just taste good as well. So I don't know if you know the Lara bars, they're fruit and nut bars. Very simple. The most complicated one has only got 6 ingredients. And they're usually based on almonds and dates. But they add all kind. They've got, I don't know, 15 different flavours, and they're really, really good. So I get to about 4 of those a day. I also grow my own bean sprouts. Just have a little sprouting pot and put peas, beans and lentils in there, and just water them a couple of times a day, and after 2 days I've got lovely crunchy bean sprouts. I mix up with some tahini and namashoyu sauce and some other yummy things. Got a friend over on Maui who's making me some raw food crackers. Again, all really good healthy stuff. And I do also have some leftover expedition meals, the freeze-dried kind of astronaut food. But you know, they're okay, but it's very processed food and not very life-enhancing. So I actually live very, very healthily when I'm out there. I tend to lose a fair bit of weight. Both my crossings so far, I've lost about 25 pounds. But I've arrived at my destination feeling very, very healthy. And, well, what's not to be healthy about? I've been out there getting lots of fresh air and exercise and good food. So that's 2 questions down, isn't it? Okay, what's number 3?
Thank you. So you were an executive, probably sat around a lot at a desk, like most of us.
Mm-hmm.
How did you prepare yourself physically for this adventure?
Well, I'd actually stopped working in the office a couple of years before I decided to row across the Atlantic. For the Atlantic, I trained really, really hard, up to 16 hours a day on the rowing machine. I only did that like 5 days, but it was pretty tough. I would start at lunchtime on the Sunday and finish around about breakfast time on the Monday. But that strategy didn't actually serve me all that well. All that grumbling that goes on in the video where I'm complaining about my shoulders, I got tendinitis in my shoulders within the first 3 days. So I thought, well, all that training was pretty much a waste of time, and there were many more interesting things I could have been doing. So now I tend to just do, when time allows, between half an hour and an hour of cardio a day and weight training about 3 times a week. So it's just pretty much the training that I would do, you know, just for life really, just to stay reasonably fit and healthy. So I don't really do any specific training for it. By the time I've been out there for a couple of weeks, I'll be as fit as I need to be. Yes?
Can you tell us a little bit more about you said the desalinization or
Mm-hmm.
drinking water, you use a plant? How does that work?
Yeah, how does the water maker work? I'm not a real expert on this. I know it works by a process of reverse osmosis. So the salt water gets sucked in through an inlet in the hull, goes through a series of filters that get out the bigger chunks of rubbish, and then the reverse osmosis gets the salt out of it, I believe. It works great when it works. Unfortunately, on my last crossing, the hatch where it lives is out on the deck underneath the rowing position, and it's supposed to be waterproof. But there was some really rough weather, and I didn't run it for a few days, and the next time I opened up this hatch to turn it on, I found that the locker was full of water, which was really bad news. There was some bad language at that point, because salt water and electronics are obviously not a great combination. So gradually the thing just rusted up and sputtered to a halt, at which point I switched over to my manual water maker, which was really inconvenient because it takes 2 hours of pumping a day, which after 12 hours of rowing, it's not really what you feel like doing. So, yes, exactly. So actually a couple of days later, it was almost with a sense of relief that I realised that that water maker had also broken. It had sprung a leak. So I still have my water reserves. As well as having the lead ballast, I have bags of water that help keep the boat bottom heavy. So then I was reduced to using those, and I had enough water to keep me going for about 2 months, but I realised I was probably going to run out before I reached Hawaii. And by pure serendipity, you know, I think fortune does favour the bold. There were some guys who were sailing a boat from Long Beach to Hawaii. This boat was made out of 15,000 empty water bottles. Some of you might have seen it. It's outside the Waikiki Aquarium for a while, the junk raft. And I'd spoken with these guys because we were both working to spread this message about plastic pollution. So we'd spoken in California before we set out. We said, oh, we really ought to collaborate, but then kind of last minute frenzy, we hadn't actually figured out how we were going to work together on this. And after my water makers had broken, it just turned out that they were gradually catching up with me on the same bit of ocean. Basically, our courses were going to cross. And people put comments on my website to let me know about this, and put comments on their website to point it out. And by using our satellite phones, we were able to coordinate and actually met up several hundred miles east of here. They were running out of food because their crossing had taken them much longer than they expected. It ultimately took them 88 days, which is really slow. I think the Transpac takes the winners something like between 10 and 14 days, is that about right? So 88 days is really very slow indeed. So they were running out of food. I was obviously having issues with water, so we were able to do an exchange of goodies. And we also had probably the most bizarre dinner party that I'll ever go to in my whole life. Joel, who actually lives here, he was one of the 2 crew on there, and he hopped overboard, harpooned this lovely big mahi-mahi that went from ocean to belly in a very short order, in about half an hour. And just great guys, and we've stayed in touch. Joel's helping refurbish my boat at the moment. Marcus is cycling from Vancouver, Canada to Mexico, again to raise awareness about plastic pollution, and I was in Vancouver to see him off from there. So it was one of those friendships forged in adversity out there on the ocean. It was pretty amazing.
Question?
Sorry, that was not a very technical answer to your question, was it? Did that tell you what you wanted to know about the water maker, though?
Question online. Somebody asked, where is your boat now?
Where's my boat now? My boat is at Pacific Shipyards. Ian very kindly connected me with the guys at Pacific Shipyards, and I'd really struggled all winter to find somewhere to keep my boat. She was actually on a development lot on the North Shore for most of the winter, just wrapped in a tarp, and she didn't look too great after that experience. But now she's been resprayed, and we're refitting her, just very simplified this year. I've just given up on trying to take lots of sophisticated equipment on board. I've had very ambitious plans in the past for data gathering, wanted to send back just such a stream of information from the ocean as a way of engaging with the audience, but the trouble is that almost anything electrical breaks out there sooner or later, and it really goes against my environmental conscience to have to throw away so much stuff at the end of each crossing. So this time I'm just going for a very simple pared down approach. Yeah.
It obviously seems like a lot of things are going on at the same time. How do you find clarity?
Wow, that's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that before. I like it. You're right, there is a lot going on. Yes, well done. The question was, with so much going on at the moment, how do I find clarity? Yeah, and I haven't even mentioned half of what's going on this year. I've got my book coming out in October. I'm going to be marching from London to Copenhagen in the winter to deliver this message to the Copenhagen delegates. So there's all the logistics around that. Then there's technology to deal with. Anyway, so yes, there is a lot going on. I prioritise things according to whether they feel like they are core to the mission. And for me, the mission is sharing the adventure with other people. So obviously the adventure has to happen, but also the technology around sharing it, that's very key as well. So I suppose when I'm not actually on the water, a lot of my time is spent talking, writing, blogging, really just sharing what I'm doing in as many different ways as I can. And I don't know, it's almost like just an intuitive thing. I think I just kind of feel when something is central to the purpose and when it's not. I don't always get it 100% right, but I feel so much clearer about where I'm heading. When I was working in the office, I had just this kind of constant niggling feeling of confusion. Just like there's something wrong with my life and just not really understanding why. You know, what was wrong with it? It looked like it was the perfect life, but there was just this unease, this kind of malaise just always there, like a black cloud. And now that's gone, and I just feel just very clear about where I'm heading and why.
Is that your husband?
Was he the black cloud? No, I would never say that. He's actually a great guy. We're still really good friends. Life has moved on. He's remarried. Still lives in the big house in West London. Still works for the same investment bank that he was working for when we were together.
Nothing's changed.
No. Yeah, the wife there's a new substitute now, but sorry, it sounded disrespectful to his new wife. It wasn't meant to sound that way. She's lovely. She's lovely. No, it's interesting. There were so many reasons for moving on from that old life, and it was just really when a lot of things kind of reached a crisis point all at once, and it kind of like I felt like I was slung-shot into this new life, and that was probably the one exception to the evolution rather than revolution. Most of the changes, the course corrections that I've made in my life have been very relatively small ones. But there have been a couple of really big, scary ones, like way outside of the comfort zone. One of them was setting out across the Atlantic, and the other one was leaving my marriage and stepping out of that life. So both of those at the time were very intense experiences, and tough to get through at the time, but have been worthwhile in retrospect. And as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Just one last one, I think.
At the TED conferences,
I have another question.
Oh, can I just take this one and then I'll come straight back to you? We'll take two more.
Sure.
They had like those 10 wishes, and Sylvia Earle
Yeah.
was just a great one for the oceans. What would be like your wishes and how can you help?
Oh, what would be my wishes? Sorry, the question was, at the TED Talks, people are allowed to express their wish for the world. So, for example, Sylvia Earle, there's a fantastic video on YouTube of Sylvia Earle talking about her wish for the oceans. What would mine be? I think it would actually be for everybody, hey, let's wish big, everybody in the whole world to really reconnect with the things that really matter. And in my humble opinion, the things that really matter are being happy, being fulfilled, and living in harmony with nature instead of exploiting it. And since I realigned my life more in tune with those three objectives, I've become a much, much more fulfilled, happy person. You know, it's just been really great. I love my life now, whereas I didn't used to. And that's something that I would really love to share with other people. I try not to say that anybody should do anything that I've done. You know, I certainly wouldn't recommend, you know, walking out of marriages or anything like that. I just want to say, this is what I've done with my life. I used to be unhappy, now I'm happy, it's worked great for me. If anybody else wants to try something that I've tried, then, you know, what's the worst that can happen? Give it a go and it might just work. So I would just like everyone to be as happy as I am. And that would be my wish. How can you help with that? I suppose the way that you could help with that is, you know, ask yourself, how do you want to be happy in this world? What do you want to do with your lives? If you want to help me directly, I suppose I ought to say this thing, even though I hate to talk about the sordid subject of money. But if you do enjoy, if you appreciate what I'm doing, I don't have a regular income. My expeditions do cost a lot of money. The crossing of the Pacific is costing around about $500,000. I mean, I'm offsetting some of that, donations of products and book advance, and you know, it sort of comes together. But there is a PayPal button on my website, so if anybody feels moved to go to rozsavage.com and make a donation, that would be very much appreciated. If you take one final question from, was that from Kauai?
Kauai? Is it Kauai or Maui?
It was Kauai. We were going to ask you how you funded this, so you just answered one of our questions. The other question I was wondering about is, I've heard so much about the plastic soup that's in the Pacific Ocean in the Northwest Gyre. Did you go through that? Did you see that? Can you tell us anything about that?
I didn't go through the thick of it, but even where I was, right on the outskirts of it, on a calm day, I could see, going down through the water column, I could see a suspension of tiny little bits of plastic. So there was, even thousands of miles from land, there was definitely evidence of mankind out there. And interesting, when I caught up with when they caught up with me, the guys on the junk raft, they were actually pulling along behind them just a little net about this size, open mouth, with just a fine mesh in it, to see how much organic matter and how much plastic they were pulling out from the ocean. And in the bit of the ocean where we were, they were finding about twice as much plastic as organic matter. But in the centre of the gyre, I believe it's more, the ratio is more like 20 times as much plastic as natural matter. So that's pretty horrifying. And it's scary that we've really only relatively recently become aware of this, and there is still, we're still generating plastic at such a phenomenal rate. And a lot of the plastic that ends up in the ocean is actually from land. It's just generated by people like you and me. And maybe it doesn't all end up in the landfill. It gets just dropped in the street, goes into the storm drains, into the rivers, and into the ocean. And as the junk guys very graphically put it, it's like the toilet bowl that never flushes. You know, the ocean is where it stops, and it just kind of sits out there in the centre of that gyre. And we can only hope that it will eventually disappear. Plastic hasn't actually been around for long enough for us to know how long it takes to actually go away, if ever. So really the best thing that we can do for that is just to try and stop it at source and avoid making the problem any worse. Again, it just comes down to those little individual decisions, just day after day. They really all accumulate, they really all add up. So the more that we can raise awareness and consciousness of that and just get people to act responsibly. So keep spreading the ripples. Okay.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Can you remind them when you're launching and invite everybody to come out?
Thank you very much. Yes. I will be launching for the next stage of my Pacific Row from Waikiki on Sunday, May the 24th. That's the Sunday of the Memorial Day weekend. So if you'd like to come and see me off, I would love to see you there. We're hoping to get quite a few boats to come out. I've been paddling with some of the local canoe clubs, and they've actually got a race that morning, but we're hoping that some of them will have enough energy to actually come and escort me out, and a few of the sailboats and motorboats. So hopefully it'll be a nice little flotilla going out, giving me a nice send-off as I row off into the sunset. The plan is that I'll be launching at 6 o'clock. So if you happen to be standing on Magic Island, it'd be great if you could come down, make some noise, bring some air horns or whatever, and give me a lovely Hawaiian aloha. That would be fantastic. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Oh, the fundraiser. Oh, yeah. So, you guys, we're having on Friday, May 22nd, over at ING Direct Cafe, a fundraiser benefiting Roz. Andy Bumatai is going to be the MC and host for the evening. We would love for you to come. The invitation, I'll actually send it to Cindy, and then she can forward it out to you. If you just RSVP, we're just asking for a $20 donation at the door, which will go directly to Roz's expedition. We're also we're doing a silent auction in the evening. So if any of the local businesses that you have friends or know anybody that might want to donate, if it's a weekend at a hotel or surf lessons, I'll share my details with Cindy. She can pass it on to you, or just hit me up on the way out. We'd love to have you to come, and there will be music and food and just a fun evening. And we're hoping to have Roz's boat on display so you can check it out up close and personal. So thanks again for your support for Roz.
Thank you.
All
right.
What's your estimated time or length to get to Australia, depending on, obviously a lot of conditions? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's another 2 stages, and I would estimate that each of those 2 stages will be between 80 and 100 days. That's what I'm estimating. It's very difficult to be at all accurate.
Yeah.
But,
so about 100 days each stage?
Between 80 and 100. If I can make this next stage a bit shorter, I would really like that, because I've been invited to speak at the UN Youth Conference in Korea on the 21st of August, and it's something that I would really, really love to do. It'd be an amazing opportunity. So row faster. So if I had a choice,
just roll straight there, right? Roll to Korea.
I get there in time for August, unfortunately. And then the 3rd stage will take place next year, probably launching September next year.
I see.
And hopefully getting me to Australia in time for the New Year fireworks.
Yeah.
That would be cool. You have to have these goals. I mean, they might sound like fairly spurious ones, but it's nice to have, a goal in mind when I set out there. So, yeah, another 2 million oar strokes still to do.
Yeah. Roz, what is the biggest seas you've been in so far?
Well, in 2007, it's very difficult to gauge the size of the waves, but the Coast Guard in 2007 reckoned that the waves were 20-25 feet when they picked me up. They tried to send out a boat to pick me up, but they said it was too rough and the boat had to turn back. And then go,
That may be a good reason to play you off.
That's the rescue boat.
That's the rescue boat. The rescue boat can't get to you. You're in big trouble.
Yeah. Yes, it wasn't quite ideal.
To stick it like Roz would go.
Yeah.
That's how you would stick it.
I'm very ugly by comparison.
Coast Guard would tow.
Okay.
Thank you all very much indeed for your interest. Thank you.
One of the interesting things you're going to see when you cross that counter current